And I tweeted, conservatism is the new counterculture.
Blood is on
I'm gonna kill all the white babies. Dominic, I'm literally about to fucking kill myself.
That's the counterculture. Grow the hell up and do something useful. Really?
Chatelet Brothers. This is a speech by Jordan Peterson. Talks about the growth of what could really be described as fascism in Canada, of all places, and how they've already set up a tribunal where they can get anybody for no reason with no accountability. Anyway, I'm glad to have somebody like this brilliant man spearheading the fight against Marxists. We shall watch.
So I'm going to read you something that a graduate student sent me from the University of Toronto the other day, and I can also tell you that I've received hundreds of letters like this. Today, I had a tutorial at the University of Toronto where I talked about Jordan Peterson and issues of personal identity, legally sanctioned identity categories, etc. I brought up a video of a tall white man in his 30s who asked students at a university how they'd react if he told them he identified as a woman, as black, as short, and as 5 years old. Spoiler alert. Students in the video resist some of the later categories a bit, but are mostly accepting. Still, students were not engaging in discussion. I asked them why. One said it was because she was worried to share her opinion for fear of being singled out or saying something offensive. I asked who else was not speaking for that reason. The whole class put their hands up. That was shocking to me. I encouraged them to speak despite their worries, and they gave me some good feedback on how to make it easier for them to do so. For instance, by working in pairs and being assigned an opinion so that they didn't have to be responsible for it or feel bad for defending it. No participation. Why? They weren't uninterested. They were afraid to speak their minds. The PC police are in your heads.
This is just like the Gulag Archipelago. Jordan Peterson, what he's describing here is just like that book he recommended. Man, that's insane. You think that we've evolved past this, that we're better than this.
You just heard a lawyer's opinion. I have many lawyers' opinions, by the way. I'll start with lawyer one, who was the counsel to several prime ministers. He talked to me about the Human Rights Tribunal because I went and saw him 2 weeks after this all started. Human Rights Tribunal is a kangaroo court, in my opinion, and it should be abolished as fast as possible. It's one of the many institutions in Canada that pose a threat to your freedom that is of almost unimaginable proportions. Here's what this top lawyer told me. If I'm taken in front of the Human Rights Tribunal, it will cost me $250,000. I will pay the legal costs for my opponents, and I will lose. He said, go back to your safe little life and shut your mouth. Second lawyer told me, my critique of the Ontario Human Rights Commission is spot on, and absent the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which has these contradictions built into it that you just heard described, much of what I was saying was illegal and has been illegal since 2012. Lawyer 3 told me that if I breached a tribunal order, so imagine I was taken in front of the Human Rights Tribunal and I was fined and then I refused to pay the fine, which I've stated that I would do. That equals contempt of court, which inevitably means jail until the contempt is purged. He told me the social justice tribunals, and that's the technical name of these essentially extrajudicial bodies in Ontario, by the way, the social justice tribunals, so the PC authoritarian types aren't even trying to hide their terminology anymore. The social justice tribunals and the SJWs, social justice warriors who staff them, have a rogue nature. They can search your house without a warrant. They can use secret hearings. There are no rules of evidence, and the judges are unaccountable. Your worst fears of the effect of a poorly written law will manifest in that environment. The SJWs say only the worst of the worst will get punished. Think again. with them at the helm, anything can and does happen. But those are legal opinions. Let's look at a real world case. Let's look at what happened when I made my videos. Let's look at how the university responded, because I can tell you, in the video I said, look, what I'm doing is probably illegal, and worse, my employer is legally responsible for it, because that's built into the codes as well. So by the way, if you're an employer, you're responsible for everything that your employees say, and everything that anybody interprets what they said as being, whether it's unintentional or intentional, whether or not a complaint has been made. So just think about that. Anyways, October 3rd, the university said, like all members of the university community, I have an obligation to comply with the law, including the provisions of the Ontario Human Rights Code. Their policy with regards to workplace harassment, which the university implied that I was engaging in a course of vexatious comment or conduct, where the course of comment or conduct is known, or ought reasonably be known, to be unwelcome. That was the October 3rd letter, which was sent to me within 1 week of posting my videos. And it was the first. So what happened essentially was the university reviewed what I had done, and then they reviewed the policies as laid out on the Ontario Human Rights Commission website, where you guys can all go read them, by the way, and then you can decide if the legal information that you were just provided with is in any degree whatsoever accurate, because I would say it isn't. The university reviewed my videos, and they decided that what I said was true. They decided that the video I made was probably illegal and that they were responsible for it. And so in an attempt to distance themselves from me, under counsel from their legal people, and believe me, the university has good legal people, they sent me a warning. And this is what happens if you want to discipline a recalcitrant employee, essentially, so that you don't have to bear legal responsibility for their acts. You send them a warning to show that you're not in favor of what they're doing. Then if they continue, you send them another warning. And then if they continue, you send them a third warning. And after the third warning, you can take further steps. Now, I pointed out to the university at one point, when we were discussing how this forum was going to proceed, that perhaps it would be in their best interests to not support the people who are trying to stop me from talking, but instead to support me legally, and if necessary to take this all the way to the Supreme Court. And the university said categorically that they would not do that. So I would say, when it comes to the contradictory provisions that are in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and so we might say roughly equality versus freedom of speech, the university decided which side they're going to go down on. And you know, people tell you all the time that this has to do with compassion, you know, and it's obviously the case that all of the compassion in this discussion is on the side of the people who are encouraging their listeners to play victim and perpetrator. And I can tell you, as a psychoanalytically oriented psychologist, that there's nothing more horrible for children and developing people than an excessive compassion, right? That's the standard Freudian devouring mother. And if you want a little archetype to go along with that, I suppose most of you have seen The Little Mermaid. Remember Ursula? Ursula wants to put King Poseidon's soul in a little jar in her collection, and she wants to take away Ariel's voice so she can't establish herself as a conscious being in the world. And I would suggest very strongly that all these people that continually talk to you about compassion do not, in the least, have your best interests in mind. And there are far more virtues and values than an excessive pity for people. You know, you don't want to pity your children even. You want to encourage them to develop in a strong and forthright manner so that they can go out and take on the world. And an excess of compassion just ensures that when they're 40, they're going to be living in your basement, plotting evil routines about the world, because their ability to manifest themselves as successful beings has been absolutely compromised. And I think that we're seeing this played out. We're seeing this played out in society, and I think it's absolutely horrifying. So on October 18th, the university mentioned to me in another warning letter that if personal pronouns are being used, the refusal to use the personal pronoun that is an expression of the person's gender identity can constitute discrimination. So now, you see what's happened is that I haven't refused to use someone's gender-neutral pronouns. I said that I would refuse. So it's not even the refusal itself that's producing the letters. It's my declared intent to engage in the refusal. And as far as I was concerned, what I was essentially doing was criticizing a piece of legislation that had not yet been passed. But the university's legal department decided that all that was sufficient for them to distance themselves from me and to engage in disciplinary activity. So, and then with regards to these human rights tribunals where all of this stuff would be sorted out, it's like those places destroy your reputation and destroy you financially. And can they put you in jail? Well, it's a complicated argument in some sense, but I can tell you that if you refuse to pay the fines, that's the next step. So I think you're being sold a bill of goods here about how benevolent the intent of Bill C-16 is, and I also know, because another lawyer told me that because I suspected that the Ontario Human Rights Commission people were behind all of this legislation, essentially speaking, in Canada, and that's actually the case, because the federal people have indicated that these policies will be interpreted in accordance with the Ontario Human Rights Commission's policies online. And so you guys should go read those, because those are not fun. And I would say that they pose an incredible threat to your liberty. And it's all done under the guise of compassion. It's like, I don't consider myself a particularly compassionate person, let's say. I think I'm more compassionate than I should be for my own well-being. But I can tell you that that is not the only virtue. And people who keep pushing that on you are making a massive mistake. And they're infantilizing you. And they're terrifying people in the university community, as you can tell by the letter that I just read. And I've received dozens of letters like that. People are afraid to say anything because they're going to get targeted. And if you wonder or not if that's true, then just think about what happened to me and ask yourself if it's true. Good enough.
Thank you.
Social justice is an oxymoron. Okay, if a guilty man is acquitted because he's the right race, that is anti-justice. If an innocent man is convicted because he's the wrong race, that's anti-justice. Social justice, however, suggests that your group identity, your identity as a person, relieves you of individual responsibility to be a decent human being. There's only one group of people who want safe spaces that are race-specific. There are only one group of people that want safe spaces so that they never have to hear from anybody of a different ideology or political persuasion. Those people are called fascists.